think the odds are in favor of Paddy. Like, do you feel like you're going to play spoiler?
I love being the underdog. I think I've been the underdog. So out of the 12 fights, I think I've been an underdog 8 or 9 times, you know, because I'm always fighting such tough competition. But yeah, absolutely. I'm going to do the same thing I did with Tony Ferguson and Khabib. I'm going to this whole thing up, and then I'm going to fight Ilya.
Paddy Pimblett sent shockwaves through the MMA world when he openly claimed he was planning to knock out Justin Gaethje at UFC 324, insisting the result would stun everyone watching.
But I think everyone's going to be shocked, to be honest, because I think I'm going to knock him out. So people won't expect that. People think I'm just going to try and grapple and take him down when I'm not. I'm going to come out and I'm going to put it on.
Expecting an early knockout, a late knockout, somewhere in the middle.
I don't see him getting past the third, just like Chandler.
Instead of leaning on the grappling reputation he built earlier in his career, Paddy announced that he intended to beat Gaethje in the very area where the former interim champion had made his name. It was the kind of bold statement that instantly grabbed attention, not only because very few fighters dared to stand toe-to-toe with Gaethje, but because Pimblett seemed completely convinced he was going to do it. Gaethje's history made that prediction even more dramatic. He had pushed for the undisputed lightweight title twice, and fallen short in the same painful way each time. First, he won the interim title in 2020, but was submitted by Khabib Nurmagomedov when the belts were unified. Later, he received another shot against Charles Oliveira in 2022 and again tapped out. Those defeats created a strange contrast in Gaethje's career. He was one of the division's most violent strikers, yet his championship dreams had slipped away because of ground battles he couldn't escape. That history caused many people to assume Pimblett's clearest path would naturally be through grappling exchanges, especially since he had the submission skills to threaten almost anyone when the fight hit the mat.
Justin, I know the last time you won that interim belt, you threw it on the ground in the cage, says it wasn't the priority for you. Do you have different feelings towards it this time and what it could mean at this point in your career?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't a priority. It was that I knew Khabib was next. And if I was going to sit there and think that I was any kind of champion with that belt, with Khabib being next, I think I was, you know, going to be foolish. I needed that mindset to prepare for that fight, and he beat me. And but ultimately, like I said, this gets us paid as a champion, and it definitely gives me the chance to fight Ilya. I want to fight Ilya. I want to play spoiler just like I did in Khabib and Tony. I'm going to fuck this up for everybody, and there's going to be no Paddy and Ilya. I'm going to do the same thing I did for that fight, and then I'm going to fight Ilya on the White House card if he's ready to fight again. We'll see when he's ready again.
But Pimblett insisted that wasn't the plan. He leaned into the idea that he had become a new version of himself, one capable of surprising the people who expected him to only chase takedowns. He pointed to the improvements he made over the years, especially the striking confidence he showed when he stopped Michael Chandler. Although he only had a couple of knockouts inside the UFC, he believed the momentum he carried from that last performance would show up again when he met Gaethje under the bright Las Vegas lights. The way he described his coming strategy made it sound like he intended to pressure Gaethje early and carry the pace deep into the fight, expecting the finish somewhere before the start of the 4th round.
But I think everyone's going to be shocked, to be honest, because I think I'm going to knock him out. So people won't expect that. People think I'm just going to try and grapple and take him down when I'm not. I'm going to come out and I'm going to put it on.
The stakes of the matchup only heightened the attention. It was the main event of UFC 324, scheduled for January 24th, 2026, with the interim lightweight belt on the line. Many people wondered whether Pimblett had earned the spot over contenders with stronger resumes, especially someone like Arman Tsarukyan, who had defeated high-ranked opponents and maintained consistent progress in the division. Pimblett brushed off the criticism by pointing out that he believed his rise had been gradual, that he had paid his dues, and that he had no doubt he would be fighting for a title eventually. Once he captured this interim belt in his mind, he saw a future where he would take out Ilia Topuria next, seize the undisputed crown, and then move up again to chase the welterweight belt. To him, this was the beginning of something bigger, not the peak.
People are upset that Paddy Pimblett's getting the title shot versus Gaethje instead of Arman. What's your take on that?
I don't know. I don't follow that too much, like that politics and that stuff. I mean, I don't know what makes it make sense. I mean, but it'll be a good fight, and Arman have to fight the winner.
So who do you got in that fight? Do you have Paddy or do you have Gaethje?
You know, I'd like to see. I like both guys, so it's an interesting fight. You know, it'll be an interesting fight.
I always make you pick one. You got to pick one. You got Paddy or you got...
You know, I'd like to see Gaethje pull it off. Just
you want to see Gaethje pull it off?
So I think Paddy's becoming so.
As the MMA world debated the matchup, Alex Volkanovski joined the discussion with his own thoughts. As the featherweight champion, he had spent years watching fighters crumble or rise under pressure, and he sensed something different about Pimblett. Volkanovski admitted Gaethje had rediscovered some of his old ferocity and still carried frightening power, but he couldn't ignore the fact that Pimblett kept winning in unexpected ways. He said, "It's a tough question, but I just can't go against Paddy anymore. This guy keeps winning. Last time, when he fought Michael Chandler, he looked good, and although Gaethje has become more dangerous again, Paddy proved in that fight that he knows how to stick to a game plan. This will be necessary in the fight against Justin, so I'm sure Paddy will do everything necessary to achieve the goal." Tony Ferguson added a different type of insight, one that came from actually fighting both men. Unlike most analysts, he had first-hand experience dealing with Gaethje's brutal pace in a 5-round war, and later sharing the cage with Pimblett. He didn't necessarily see Pimblett as technically superior, but he considered Gaethje's mental state the real factor. Gaethje had spent years chasing the undisputed championship, only to watch both opportunities slip away in devastating fashion. Ferguson figured that kind of heartbreak didn't disappear quickly. Heading into yet another interim title fight, he suspected Gaethje might be carrying old frustrations. Pimblett, however, had never been in any title fight, which meant he was entering with excitement rather than baggage. Ferguson viewed it as a meeting between two fighters who could both be beaten, but he thought the emotional energy leaned toward Pimblett. For Gaethje, this felt like revisiting a painful chapter. For Pimblett, it felt like stepping into something brand new.
Paddy's not bad, dude. Paddy's not bad. He's very beatable, and Gaethje's very beatable as well. But when it goes into the passion and how upsetting Justin Gaethje has always been about not getting that real title shot, and they just keep dangling it right there again. Paddy's in for a new treat, right? Paddy's the one that's never fought for a belt. He's going in there. He's going to be trying to, get that stuff. He's going to feel a little bit more fresher. He's going to have that little bit of excitedness, in my opinion.
Din Thomas approached the matchup from a more tactical perspective. He believed Pimblett was walking into what might be the only reasonable opportunity he would ever get to claim UFC gold. Thomas compared Gaethje to the rest of the division's killers, specifically Tsarukyan and Topuria, and concluded that Pimblett matched up far better with Gaethje than the other rising threats. Gaethje, while still incredibly dangerous, had reached the later stages of his career, whereas Tsarukyan and Topuria were still climbing at alarming speed, showing sharper skill sets and more athleticism. Thomas felt that if Pimblett didn't win this interim title fight, he might never get another opening as favorable. Even though he recognized the rare chance in front of Pimblett, Thomas still doubted he could pull it off. He saw too many stylistic obstacles and too many ways Gaethje could drag Pimblett into deep waters. Thomas didn't think Pimblett could control Gaethje on the ground for any meaningful length of time, and he didn't see Pimblett avoiding damage for 25 minutes. In his eyes, the matchup strongly favored Gaethje. The real question was how long Pimblett could survive before the pressure overwhelmed him.
Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje fighting for the interim title. Whoever wins that fight will move on to fight Ilya, and I don't think that there will be a title defense for the interim title. If I was to bet, there will be no title defense of the interim title. I think that the next fight for whoever wins between Paddy and Justin, I think their next fight will be Ilya Topuria. So do not think they will defend the interim title. So good movement and clarity at 155 pounds. I feel for Arman Tsarukyan, but this fight's going to be incredible.
Eddie Alvarez, who famously handed Gaethje his first UFC defeat, offered a different angle on the fight entirely. Instead of focusing on technical comparisons, he emphasized preparation. To Alvarez, Gaethje's intensity inside the cage couldn't be understood unless a fighter had felt it before. He believed Pimblett's typical training environment wasn't enough to mirror the chaos Gaethje produced. Alvarez felt Pimblett needed to surround himself with training partners who would force him out of his comfort zone, people who pressured constantly, stayed in the pocket, and fired back relentlessly. If Pimblett pushed himself through that kind of discomfort long before the fight, Alvarez thought he would walk into the cage ready for whatever Gaethje brought, but if he only experienced that level of aggression for the first time on fight night, he would run out of time before he could adjust.
That night 8 years ago, what's like the first thing that comes to mind when you think of that fight with Justin?
That I'm glad it's over and I never want to do it again. I'm like, the fans don't ever ask for a rematch or anything like that, because that would have never. I'm glad. He's unique, man, and he's one of my favorite guys to watch. So but if you want to beat Justin Gaethje, you have to. So he's a forward fighter and a pressure fighter that he will stand in the pocket and he's gonna throw everything he got in that pocket. If you don't meet him, you'll get chewed up. So Paddy, the way to beat a guy who like does this, very violent, aggressive pressure fighter, you have to meet him. You have to throw when he throws. So you got to be brave, and you have to go when he goes in between his shots. If you do that, you got a fair shot. If you don't do that, if you're not brave and courageous and throw when he throws in between his shots, it's going to be a really long night. It's going to be a hard night for you.
Matt Brown chimed in with a broader criticism, shifting the spotlight away from Pimblett himself and focusing instead on what UFC 324 represented. Brown had been part of the sport long enough to watch it evolve, and he noticed a trend he didn't like. To him, the decision to place Pimblett in an interim title fight felt more like a promotional play than a competitive reward. He pointed out that Pimblett hadn't beaten top contenders, and that most of his recent opponents were on losing streaks. Meanwhile, fighters like Taruk Yan had done everything right, yet found themselves pushed aside. Brown felt that if popularity and personality started outweighing fights won and opponents beaten, the sport risked losing the fairness that had shaped it. He half-joked that if things kept moving in this direction, title shots might as well be based on social media follower counts. Beneath the humor, though, there was a real frustration about the direction of matchmaking.
They're not even, like, they're just basically saying Paddy's more popular, you're getting it over Armin.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, right? And that's, I mean, God, I hate like how I kind of get into this too much, but I mean, that's really like, that's the definition of, you know, a monopoly where a single promoter owns the title and the rankings. And it's not a good thing for the sport, in my opinion. And I have to question what it's going to do for the longevity of the sport. You know, I don't think in the short term it's really going to make a big difference, right? Like, you know, it's going to sell the next fight, right? It's going to sell the next pay-per-view. But trends tend to come and go, right? Fads tend to come and go. At some point, like, you know, to have staying power and lasting power, I think it requires, you know, a meritocracy-based system. It's going to require, you know, some, you know, if you want to bring in guys like Armin Tsarukyan or Movsar Evloev, I always mess up how I say his name. You know, you want to bring in these Olympic wrestling level guys. I mean, they don't want to have to go out there and put on some ridiculous show to become a champion. They don't want to have to go on Instagram and start a podcast and make you know, whatever kind of skits on social media and this silly kind of stuff. Like, they just want to be a world champion because they want to be the best athlete. And that's what makes me wonder how the staying power is going to be, right? When you're dealing with guys that are, you know, legitimate athletes that want to be legitimate athletes, and they're getting passed up by guys that are entertainers.
Amid all these opinions, Charles Oliveira offered a more balanced breakdown rooted in his own experience fighting Gaethje. He knew better than most how explosive Gaethje could be in striking exchanges because he once stood directly in front of him before turning the tables with a submission. He said, Pimblett strikes well on his feet, can take the fight to the ground, and is constantly moving. I think Pimblett won't want to exchange blows with him. He'll probably try to take it to the ground. If he decides to exchange blows, he could be knocked out. But if he bets on the takedown, he has a chance to become champion. Still, I would really like Gaethje to come out victorious. All these perspectives created a swirling storm of opinions around UFC 324. Pimblett's confidence feeds the hype. Gaethje's history adds emotional weight. Analysts, fighters, and former champions each view the matchup through their own lens. Some see opportunity, some see danger, and others see a turning point for the sport itself. Every viewpoint adds a different layer to the anticipation, setting the stage for a fight that feels unpredictable in ways no one can quite agree on. Whether people believe Pimblett's knockout prediction or dismiss it as bravado, one thing is certain: the fight has captured everyone's attention.